So this new moon in Leo is not just about creativity or self-expression. It's an actual major turning point in the way that we relate to personal power. It speaks to our sense of visibility and to speak our truth. You see, the Leo archetype is about bringing our attention towards ourselves and validating from within. This is a turning point because it asks us the question, are we ready to speak from our heart? What makes this new moon so powerful is that directly opposite in the other sign of Aquarius, we've got Pluto. And this is a major evolutionary pressure. So the question that comes with this new moon is, which version of myself is actually speaking? The one that has been conditioned to perform and to seek external validation, or the one that is internally secure and ready to show something from true vulnerability, authenticity, and transparency? This new moon questions our ability to speak from our own personal resonance and power. It's a shift, and a major one at that. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through the transits and how they're actually activating this monumental moment for us. And if you want to learn how to actually track these energies within your natal chart as well, I'm also going to show you that a bit later. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's move on to the charts. And now you can see on the screen over there that I've kind of color-coded some of the aspects that I'm going to be talking about. So we're going to start out by looking at the actual new moon itself. And that you'll see on the screen, on the chart itself, you'll see there's a green arrow, yeah? That's where the new moon is, sitting at 2 degrees of Leo. And then we've got Pluto sitting on the other side at 2 degrees of Aquarius, okay? And Pluto, by the way, is also retrograde. So a quick note, when Pluto is retrograde, what happens to our psychology and our emotional field is that we get to review the attachments that we have to our lives, right? Human beings make emotional attachments to the things that we consider important and prioritize within our lives. When we go through a Pluto retrograde cycle, we are reviewing those emotional attachments. And most of the time we come to some realization that there are some attachments in our lives that have either run their course or they're not working for us anymore. And so this review process allows us to progressively let go. So that's what Pluto retrograde means. So just in the sign of Aquarius, it just simply means that we're moving through a decentralization experience. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So this opposition here, which is the reason why I called it a turning point, is that the Leo archetype, as I said, invites us to speak our personal truth. And because Mercury, that is right on top of that new moon as well, is part of the process, it's the communication that I'm adding in here, right? Our language structure, how we form and label things. Also, interesting note, Mercury is retrograde. So we can see here that both Mercury and Pluto being retrograde on top of this new moon adds this dimension of internal power and reflection and orientation. Okay, so what I've got written down here for us with this opposition to think about is that when Pluto in Aquarius is in its review process, it pulls us into the deeper layers, okay? The deeper layers of our emotional conditioning and also the way that we are conditioned by the collective, okay? The collective energy, the collective consensus, the rules that are generally shared amongst all of us. So the question then is, who told you what visibility should look like? In other words, who decided or who decides what you should and shouldn't say, what you should act and how you should act, what is your truth, and what is the truth that you should say? It's a very confrontational pressure that is inviting us to look at how parts of ourselves we might hide in favor of, say, inauthenticity. So this opposition is really asking us to excavate and see what types of conditioning or impressions or patterns within us might hide the expression of our truth. And ultimately, it is an attempt to help us become more honest with what is real, alive, and vital. So part of this process brings up power dynamics, like fears from the ego structure that says, how could I survive? How am I going to, if I share my truth or be authentic, that is threatening. These are all themes that can generally come along with this opposition. But as you know, it's an attempt to try to break away from these patterns so that you could be more authentic and aligned with what is true and honest and real for you. And of course, we're all going through this process. So the key invitation here is to let go of expression that seeks validation and reconnect to what wants to emerge within. So what wants to emerge from within, right? What is honestly wanting to come from you? That is the essence of this opposition and part of this new moon. Okay, so let's move on a little bit over here, and we can take a look at our Saturn trining this actual new moon. So we've got Saturn and Neptune sitting there right at the bottom. And if you look on the screen, you'll see there's a blue arrow. That's where Neptune and Saturn are sitting in the sign of Aries. They are also retrograde. So we've got a lot of retrograde planets in this new moon at this point in time. So the trine is being made between the Saturn and the Neptune and the green arrow. That is where the new moon is. You see it on the chart? Okay. So this energy is about bringing stability. Okay. It's a stabilizing energy, ironically. And the voice of Saturn is, we need to slow down and allow ourselves inward reflection. Okay. There's a big misconception in the world at the moment that Saturn is an archetype of career and limitation and all of the keywords that come along with actually giving us the false impression of Saturn. When we work with Saturn in a deeply honest way, we actually see that this is an energy that is about emotional maturation. And so Saturn builds the structure slowly so that it's strong, the foundation is strong. And part of that expression when it's in our human psychology and the way that we act out Saturnian experiences is deep contemplation and slowing down and saying, I'm thinking about this carefully. I'm feeling into this carefully. I'm taking my time with what naturally arises. So this trine brings stability through Neptunian insight, right? This moment of extreme clarity that just comes through. And then we allow ourselves to drop into reflection and emotionally digest and integrate that into our lives. So part of this Saturn retrograde and this Neptune retrograde connection also has to do with breaking down the imposed authority that we have taken on from prior paradigms, right? So if the theme is to decentralize, is to break apart, is to free yourself from patterns that thwart and suppress your authentic voice, then the Saturn energy is helping us dissolve and break apart and become distant from these internalized messages that might suppress or repress your honest and authentic voice. And it's where we might still seek external validation as a way to prove our own existence. Okay? You get that? We as human beings, when we're working through our emotional development, we're still sometimes acting from a place of somebody else carry the weight, rather than us learn how to carry the weight of our own existence. That's the Saturn-Neptune offering here, is where can you reclaim that sense of inner power, while at the same time acknowledging that part of that inner power requires you to emotionally mature and hold your own. Okay, so the Neptune energy over here, the retrograde Neptune, is dissolving the fantasy, and it asks for spiritual maturity, right? To be honest with, rather than caught up in the ideal of how you would like it. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult challenges for us when we're working with Neptune, is the realization that Neptune actually wants to bring you into deeper truth rather than send you on a fantasy mission. It's a lot safer there because it means that it's comfortable. So it's an intense transit in the sense that both of them are retrograde right there, but they are supporting an awakening of honest, authentic expression within inside of you. Okay, let's take a look at the Mercury retrograde that's in the chart right now. And Mercury is located just above the sun and the moon in this chart. So if you look again for the green arrow, you'll see that Mercury is just above it. And again, Mercury is retrograde, okay? So it's an internal review of our voice and our narrative that is connected to our self-expression, okay? It's an internal review, retrograde, connected to our voice, the narratives that we run, and how that becomes our expression. So the question again here with Mercury retrograde is, what messages, stories, narratives that you run that hide your voice? That can show up as shyness, a desire to not speak, a lack of inability to trust yourself, to have faith in yourself, to believe in yourself, whatever messages that you might carry that reduces your stance of visibility and here I am. That's what this Mercury retrograde is asking to review. Again, it's in an opposition to Pluto, so part of this is about uprooting and exposing what is not honest. Okay, so Mercury retrograde here is the supporting process, okay, of reconnection to yourself. It's the voice and the message and the truth that you want to speak, that you feel is right and authentic for you and is transparent. This energy wants to be exposed for you to empower, okay? All right, now, there are two more activations here in this chart that I think are important that will continue to keep compounding the message that I'm putting across here. So the first one, of course, now you need to look in the chart. You'll see there it's Venus and Uranus, okay? And it's indicated by a black icon on the chart, right? There it is. It's around like a 5 o'clock position in the chart. Now, we'll start off with the Venus. Venus is at 22 degrees of Gemini, and it is forming, and it has been forming, a square to the south and north node. If you look on the chart, right at the top, you'll see there's Mars sitting there right on top of the south node of the chart, okay? Now, in evolutionary astrology terms, that signature, when the planet, in this case Venus, is making a 90-degree aspect, a square, to the south and north nodes, we call this a skip step. And so what this means is that there is a karmic tension that is present for all of us on the world right now. And there's a karmic tension internally with us too. So it's deeply connected to the entire collective and the narrative and the stories that we have, that we share as a collective, right? Large amounts of people, collective, more than one person, right? We all share a story, and it's deeply embedded in the way that we validate life, we express ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves, the myths we run, very much connected to this axis. So to have this Venus squaring the nodes is an important one. Not only because Venus itself is in the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury, ruling that skip step, tells us that we are at a precipice, turning point, in which we get to decide, do we want to continue to keep telling ourselves the truth of something that's actually false? In other words, we're telling ourselves things that are not true, and that keeps you repressed. Or are you beginning to allow yourself more space, more freedom, and to cross a threshold, and to allow yourself to be more honest, transparent, and truthful with your life? So the square, again, as I said, is a deep karmic pattern that we all share. And it is very much associated with the upbringing and then eventually the breaking apart of our collective conditioning, where we have not really felt that sense of inner authenticity and the ability to speak freely with what is our truth for fear of judgment, persecution, the fear of isolation or exile. This is what's up for grabs over here, is to cross that threshold and to still own that power. And we might flip-flop between can I, cannot do this. It's very developmental at this point in time. Now, Venus again is squaring that Mars. So this is a moment where we ask ourselves where our relationship patterns are still based on the outdated aspects of ourselves, or are we allowing ourselves to begin to form new patterns within ourselves that are bringing us into conscious action and conscious integration of who and what it means to be truthful for yourself and to be honest with yourself and to be able to express that authenticity and validate it without question. It's the ongoing development of becoming stronger in that way. This is Saturn's message to the new moon. It's the Leo archetype that's asking us to do that. And this skip step with Gemini here, and Venus in Gemini says, let's learn to prioritize what is real and honest for yourself. And you can see it in the collective. Like, you can see how information is coming out to the surface, and it's very, very difficult to hide. This is the Pluto effect at the moment. This is the skip step at the moment, the back and forth between can we not. Okay. Now, Uranus and Gemini. And we will do a video on Uranus and Gemini. It will come on the channel. I do apologize for having been able to be posting as frequently as we'd like to, but we're still here and we will be doing a Uranus and Gemini video. But for now, Uranus and Gemini is a huge deal, of course, but it trines in this chart over here. The Uranus there sitting in the black block, it trines Pluto, the red triangle, and it also trines the south node, if you can see that in the chart there, right? And again, that trine between those two planets tells us that there's a huge energetic flow of wanting to finally say, let's move away from this old paradigm. Let's move away from these old patterns. Uranus is going to be introducing, and has been already introducing, the potential for a higher frequency, right? This is about allowing ourselves to understand and be connected to a state of being that is beyond what our current paradigm of thinking is about. And Uranus wants to accelerate us further than that. So say, hey, what is new? What is possible? And to create new language, to create new synapses within our brain that allows us to experience the possibility of things in completely new ways, which can feel very scary at times because, of course, Uranus loves to take us away from what feels comfortable in the known. So what's cool about this trine is that Uranus has got our back. It's standing there and it's saying, I will give you the flashes of unexpected insights or the clarity that you need, or I'll bring information to the surface that will change the landscape of how things work. And we can't go back to having it hidden. So part of Uranus's energy over here is to activate information to come to the surface that allows us to see, oh, here's where the pattern is holding me back. Here's where the pattern is not in my favor. Here's where I'm still tied emotionally to something that is not working for me, that a false truth, an outdated reality. And that rapid energy that comes from Uranian insights allows us to bring that to the surface so that we can confront it with Pluto and just with a Neptune moment, allow it for us to let go so that we can emotionally mature Saturn into a new, stronger, authentic expression. So Uranus's energy here is a recalibration of our nervous system and a connection for us to be able to move into a new way of being that is far more authentic and honest. That's the promise at the moment. The thing about this full moon is it's not about recreating something new externally. It's about seeing what is burning away that is false and that has been tied to your expression. It's about seeing how the conditioning that has taken root in our expression on roles and identities and expectations that you felt that you've needed to fulfill or be, that is failing and falling away. You are becoming aware of that. This new moon wants to bring you back to the center of your own being. It's not a loud energy. It's just a real. So if this is awakening something within you, right? You're noticing maybe a deeper desire to want to understand these patterns with more clarity, right? Not circling around, but lost. And you want to actually learn this language, then the Evolutionary Astrology Immersion enrollment is still open. And we're going to be starting this program in September. It's my most comprehensive astrological program. And what I'm going to be doing is teaching you how to read the natal chart, interpret transits, be able to see the entire spectrum of the astrology from a ground up perspective, from the bottom up, so that you actually develop and connect with your own wisdom and understanding rather than just having an intellectual connection to the words and the language, but not really actually feeling it within yourself. So it's a revolutionary way of actually learning astrology. And for those of you that have already gone through the process, if you want, you can share your own experience in the comment section to let other people know how this went for you. But yeah, this is still open. We're going to be beginning in September. There is a link down below to go and read more about it and sign up if you want to. And it will be an honor to be able to walk and guide you through a process of learning astrology, being able to read the charts using a more somatic practice perspective as well. So I'll see you there. And until the next video, take care, guys. Bye.